How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just going to give people a few minutes to join in. I'm not sure exactly how things are breaking off, but okay. Guess I will go ahead and get started, and then I'm sure we'll have more folks joining us. Looks like people are coming into the meeting. Hi, I'm Charlotte Triplett. I am a partner at Adventuring, which is a partner for this hackathon event, as well as a co-founder of and president of Catalyze. And I'm here today to help moderate the How to Pitch MIT Hacking Medicine workshop. Our speaker today is Tanya Telkar, and she is the co-director of the MIT Hacking Medicine and also a PhD candidate at Harvard.
Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the How to Pitch session. Hope things are going well, that you guys have all submitted your team registrations. So I will go ahead and get started. So first of all, once again, thank you to everyone for being here this weekend. We really appreciate you participating, and us at MIT Hacking Medicine are super excited to have partnered with OHSU and all of their partners to be able to bring this hackathon to you guys virtually. So as we mentioned at the the opening ceremonies and have been talking about over the weekend so far, you will be pitching your ideas that you are coming up with over this weekend in a 3-minute pitch on Sunday, and that will be within your track. And so with everything that you guys are working on over this weekend, it's definitely understandable that it might feel a little bit daunting to try and fit everything into 3 minutes, but we have some tips and tricks for you guys to be able to go through, what exactly is it that you want to be looking for and putting together when you are constructing your pitch, as well as other things that may help as you are trying to put your deck together. So I will go through the deck right now, and then after that, if there are any questions, we'll open the floor for that. So the first thing that we'd like to start off with is really just describing what exactly a pitch is. So a pitch is a way for you to tell a story. As I had mentioned yesterday, we really want to make sure that you have a way to be able to explain what your problem is and the motivation is through a story. The goal of your pitch at the end of the 3 minutes is to be able to convince both the audience and the judges that your problem, the one that you've identified at the beginning of this weekend and are currently working on, is one that absolutely needs to be addressed right now, that the solution that you've come up with is ideal to be able to solve that problem, and that the implementation of the solution and your plan for it moving forward is both feasible and sustainable. So the main key to a good pitch is that you are demonstrating that your problem, solution, and implementation have the potential to be able to make a real change, and that you demonstrate the confidence in that ability from both your team's perspective as well as the ideas that you guys have come up with. So there are 4 main pillars of a pitch that have been identified, and we have adapted this from materials that have been provided to us by Abelson Taylor and Noah Lowenthal. The first pillar is that, once again, you want to tell them a story that they want to believe in. You'll be able to motivate your pitch using that. The second is that you want to make sure that you have a single-minded focus as you are going through your pitch. Keep it as simple as possible. The third is that you are thoroughly prepared and that you are concise in the way that you are presenting things. And the fourth is that you are demonstrating expertise and leadership. And so I'll go through these 4 pillars and talk about them in a little bit more detail. So with the first pillar, with the story, you want to make sure that you're telling an emotional story. As we mentioned yesterday during the problem pitch session, you want to be able to communicate exactly what motivated you to solve this problem. Why exactly are you passionate about this project? It may be a personal experience that someone on the team has had, it may be something that you have observed, or it may even just be a story about someone that you've made up, but you want to be able to motivate it using humanity as opposed to trying to motivate that you guys have the technical expertise and all of this fancy technology to be able to solve the problem without exactly motivating why the problem is important by touching people's humanity. You're not really going to be able to push that technology as a solution. The second thing that you want to focus on is making sure that you have a very single-minded focus and that you limit the complexity. Make sure that you're not trying to solve every single problem or sub-problem within the larger umbrella of problems that you might have identified. Could you pitch this idea and problem to a 5th grader, and would they understand why exactly this problem needs to be solved, as well as what your solution is? You want to be able to make it as simple as possible. And as I mentioned before, try and sum everything up within a single sentence. So less is more. Building off of that, as I mentioned, you should be able to summarize your problem and solution within a single sentence. So one problem for your one sentence for your problem, and then one sentence for your solution. This is very important, once again, to be able to communicate what exactly it is that you are trying to solve and how exactly you're trying to solve it in a way that, if someone only has about 10 seconds in their day to be able to listen to you, you can grab their attention right away. So for example, with YouTube, I think most of us probably use YouTube every day or very, very often, and we have a general sense of what exactly it is that YouTube does, but we might not be able to explain it within a single sentence. However, YouTube, when they markets themselves as broadcast yourself. And it makes complete sense. We understand what exactly it is that YouTube is trying to do for its users and customers. Your business pitch should focus on only one case study. So when you're going through and you've identified your problem and solution, you need to be able to show who your target demographic is and who your early adopters are going to be. So who exactly are your stakeholders and who are your customers? Are they a particular group within the city that you live in? Is it going to be a particular population of individuals who have a certain disease? How can you make sure that you are identifying who exactly that first target demographic is? A way to be able to try and narrow down on this is to think about, if we gave you $100,000 just at the end of this hackathon, where exactly would you start? How would you go about disseminating your solution to make sure that you're able to actually make an impact to the individuals who have been identified within the problem? You also want to make sure that your presentation design reflects the fact that you've thought about these ideas in a very simple manner. In this way, you want to make sure that your presentation design is clean and concise. We find many times that the slides that are presented have a ton of text on them, and you're trying to explain all of the things that you did over the weekend. It's great to be able to do that, and you can definitely describe more things within the words that you are saying, but you want to make sure that the judges and audience are not distracted by what's on the slide and trying to read through all of that instead of listening to you and all of the great work that you are trying to convey. So one way that we recommend you guys get around this is by writing out your statements and then cutting anything that you don't need. We also recommend, bolding and highlighting certain words that will be important for individuals to focus on. So for example, a lot of people, if they do end up coming up with an application that they want as their solution, will end up showing mocks of their solution. The problem with this, in this particular format of showing, the entire workflow of how this would end up working, is that there's a ton of text on this slide right now. So no one really knows where to be able to focus in, and they might try and read the small text that's there, here describing the book or the authors and so on. So a couple of ways to be able to get around this is to actually try and just highlight specific mockups. So only show one mock at a time and make sure that you're showing a very, or that you're conveying a very quick message about what the purpose of that mock is. The second is to be able to make potentially a video, and I can go into that in a little bit as well, that basically goes through the workflow, but also once again highlights the exact steps that are being highlighted within the workflow and what they need to be focusing on for each screenshot. Make sure that over the weekend that you're rehearsing a lot. You only have 3 minutes to be able to present everything. And even though we emphasize the problem a lot, the ending describing your business model is just as important as the beginning. So make sure that you're able to get to it. And make sure also that you're able to triple check any sort of audio or video or demos that you have embedded within your slides, because especially in this virtual environment, there may be technical issues that end up coming up. So really make sure that you're able to understand how much time it's going to take to be able to start any of these audios and videos or any transitions that you end up putting in. We also recommend actually that you do get started on the slide deck as early as possible, such that you are able to put down the words and start rehearsing all of the information that you're going to present. And that's also partially why we do have these practice pitch sessions both tonight and tomorrow morning, such that you're able to get that practice presenting to others. The fourth pillar, you want to be able to demonstrate your knowledge. So really drive the point home with the Q&A. You're getting 3 minutes for the presentation, but you're also getting 2 minutes for Q&A from the judges. Make sure that you have kind of delegated within your group with regards to who is able to answer what type of question. So for any technical questions that come up, have the technical experts answer that. For anything with regards to the business model, have someone who is an expert or did the research about the business model to answer that. Make sure that you're never contradicting your teammate or what you have just presented in your slides during the Q&A. It shows that your team was not working cohesively and doesn't really instill confidence in the judges that you guys are able to work together as a complete team to be able to bring this product to fruition. So now that I've gone over a couple of ideas of how exactly you should be thinking about putting information into your pitch, we also have come up with a basic guideline of how you should potentially be organizing your pitch. And we find that this works out pretty well for most teams as they're thinking about how much time they should allot to each section. So an overview is that we usually recommend about 1 minute to describe the problem, 1 minute to describe the solution, and then 1 minute to go over the business plan. There's obviously a little bit of wiggle room in this. If, for example, you're able to describe your problem really efficiently, you can get a couple of seconds back to be able to talk more about the solution and business plan. But this is a great guideline to start off with, at least. So with the title slide, you want to be able to very quickly show what exactly you are pitching. We recommend just putting the name of your product as well as a catchy graphic to be able to show and very quickly highlight what exactly it is that you have been working on over the weekend. We also want you to save time by skipping introductions, and I have a recommendation of how exactly it is that you can go ahead and show who your team is and highlight their great potential later on in the presentation. You want to make sure that your title slide does not take more than 5 seconds. You should be able to very quickly say, hey, we are team X, and this is what we have worked on. Let's go straight into the problem. So within the problem, as I've emphasized many times before, really make sure that you're telling your story and explaining why exactly it is that you're here. In addition to the story, however, as we mentioned last night, you want to be very quantitative and explain with real data some background about your problem. So how many people experience this? What's the market share of individuals, and what does it cost the healthcare system at the moment for the number of people who experience this problem? In addition, are there any solutions out there already? Why are they inadequate? You can demonstrate a patient timeline and show, these are the places where the current solutions fail in being able to solve the problem. Within the solution, just show us what you did. As I mentioned before, you can try and show mock-ups, or you can have a video or something like that to be able to explain what exactly it is that you have built over the weekend. We really encourage you guys to at least show a little bit of potentially, a design document or something that you guys have put together as opposed to just an explanation. Even if the code behind it or, the framework behind it hasn't been solidified as of yet, try and think through that design and highlight that. For the business plan, you really want to be able to show how exactly your solution is going to fit in with the industry. How is it going to continue to be a product that individuals will pay for or that will continue to be able to solve the problem? And what is your timeline for being able to bring this product to the actual healthcare industry? You want to be able to demonstrate that you guys have thought about how much time it's going to take to develop your solution out further, and then finally pilot it with individuals. One question that usually ends up coming up from the judges is who exactly is going to pay? Is it going to be the end users? Is it going to be insurance companies? Is it going to be hospitals? For whoever you do identify as paying, you also want to make sure that it's something that's reasonable and something that they will probably end up wanting to pay for, that they have a real need for, especially if they're not the end user of the product. Make sure that you're also highlighting your competition and explaining why you are better. With many of the problems that you guys have pitched, while they still do exist in the industry, there have probably been a couple of people who have either tried to solve that particular problem or use an existing solution to be able to try and branch out into this problem. So a way to be able to do this is to create a comparison chart that compares your product with other products that may be out there that could be used to try and solve this problem. As we show here, there are many features that are needed to be able to solve this problem, but the other competitors are not able to really get all of them. Your product, on the other hand, can check all of those boxes and be able to very quickly solve the problem that you have created the solution for. So showing a chart like this and not necessarily having to go into much detail about it very quickly highlights that you guys have done your research, you understand what's out there, and you understand why you guys are different. Highlighting that differentiation really does actually make a difference between a pitch that is good versus a pitch that shows that they have the potential to really make a change in the market. For the Q&A, this is where you guys can then highlight who you are and who your introductions are. So have a slide up that has your faces, your background, as well as what role you might be playing if you end up continuing with this project. The judges will then be able to know who exactly they are talking to, and you don't have to go through and list everyone's background and names. They can just be up there on the slide and individuals will be able to see who you are. You can also include appendix slides for things that you feel might end up coming up in the Q&A, but you don't necessarily have the time to address within your 3-minute pitch, or feel that they're not as important, but could be helpful in being able to provide more details with regards to the idea that you have come up with. So you can always include those appendix slides at the end of your presentation and go through to them to be able to demonstrate to the judges that you have thought about other things that you didn't necessarily have time to pitch. So to sum it up with some additional key tips, a lot of people end up coming up to us and asking, should I? So though you may not be able to, obviously in this case, really show a real life demo, especially since we will be the ones who are controlling your slides. Make sure that you do have an ability to navigate around any technical challenges. So videos that you may create that highlight the product that you've created over the weekend may buffer and might take time, especially if there are individuals who do have failing internet connections. So really try screenshotting and using pictures to be able to demo your product. We really recommend that over any videos, though we have occasionally seen videos that do work. We also recommend that you don't have a full demo unless it can truly wow the judges. So a lot of people will feel that they need to be able to put something together, and if they have an app that they're creating, for example, they want to be able to code it and show that they've taken screenshots on their phone. But if it's not something that looks like a very complete product, it doesn't instill confidence again within the judges that this is something that you've necessarily thought through, and kind of makes them think that you just focused purely on the technology side as opposed to really thinking through the workflow and process for individuals who are using it. So highly recommend trying to focus more on the visuals and workflow of it as opposed to necessarily building it out unless you do have the time and expertise. With regards to designing the slides, as I mentioned before, make sure that you don't overwhelm the audience. We recommend that you keep it to a single visual and a single topic, and that you don't necessarily try to prove your slides with too many details. So if you do have a product that has a lot of different technologies that are all incorporated into each other, you don't have to necessarily highlight all of those. You can be speaking about them and say that we have many different advanced technologies that we've incorporated into our product, but you want to highlight just the single mock and single visual of what your product looks like without necessarily going into all of the bells and whistles. And you definitely will have the Q&A to be able to talk about that a little bit more if the judges are interested. With regards to logistics, as I mentioned, you will have 3 minutes of pitching and 2 minutes of Q&A. You want to make sure that your presentation is on PowerPoint or PowerPoint X. You'll then be uploading your slides to Microsoft Teams and providing us with a link, and we'll share the forms for that tomorrow for you to be able to submit your final slides. One thing, once again, logistically, is that we will be the ones controlling your slides. So we're going to have a master slide deck of all of the individuals or all of the teams who are going to be pitching tomorrow, and we'll be going through team by team in a random order. What this means is that you will probably have to incorporate some sort of transition into your rehearsal and presentation. So as you guys are rehearsing, we recommend that there is someone else on your team who is controlling the slides and that you are walking through as if you are asking someone else to be able to advance to the next slide. There are a couple of different ways that we have seen this happen. One is by simply saying next or next slide. The other is that individuals will end up holding up a paper that says next within their video, and that also cues us to be able to move forward and proceed with your slides. So just be thinking a little bit more about how that's going to work, and then you guys can contact us at the beginning, right before your pitch, to be able to let us know how we should be paying attention to going on to the next slide. And so that's all I have for you guys for today. Once again, feel free to ask any questions or clarifications about more ideas of how you can end up formatting your pitch. We do recommend, once again, that you guys sign up for practice pitches both tonight and tomorrow morning. Just sign up for one tonight and one tomorrow morning. We'll be able to give you a little bit more background and feedback on anything that you guys have come up with. And just being able to rehearse and say your pitch to individuals who are outside of your team is always a good rehearsal for that final pitch. So let us know if you have any questions, and good luck, you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And so
Thank you.
A few questions. And since we have 61 folks in chat, so I think maybe raising hands is going to be a good, and I can start calling on folks. I did want to clarify, and I think you addressed some questions that I had already received before we started about the demos. But if somebody does choose to do a demo in their video, there was a question about sort of how do I get that to be shown, or how do I wrangle that since someone else is controlling my slide?
Yeah, so what ends up happening is that in PowerPoint, you usually have the ability to embed potentially a YouTube video or another video file within your slide. And so what you can do is that you can set it such that it plays automatically when you end up moving to the slide. And that way we don't have to do anything on our side. We just click next and it automatically will start playing. The other thing that you can potentially do is incorporate that into the words that you're saying. So say go to next slide and then say press video. The problem with that is that there is a little bit of lag time in, conveying that information and conveying that request, and finally, the video buffering as well. So I highly recommend the first option where you end up playing the video automatically. But once again, I think there are a couple of different options for a way to be able to highlight your demo, and you can work around and play around with what's going to work best for your team.
Great. So now we can open it up to general questions. If you want to raise your hand, and then I can unmute you so you can ask your questions. Are there really no questions? Or if you're too shy and you want to type it into the chat, I'm happy to ask your questions as well. Someone had asked if the meeting is being recorded. Yes, it is. So I don't know where those recordings are going to live. Someone else wants to know, how do we sign up for the practice pitch sessions? I believe there's a channel for that.
Yeah, so there is a link. If you guys go to the full schedule, there's a link to both sign up for the practice pitch sessions, as well as a link to the meetings themselves that will be happening for the practice pitch sessions. So you should be able to go into those and easily sign up for the sessions for either tonight or tomorrow. Make sure that you're only pitching within your track, just so that we're able to keep that fair across all tracks.
Okay, and I'm trying to unmute Lisa right now, but I'm still not sure that I'm doing it correctly. So doesn't seem to get, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Lisa, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. What's your favorite question you've ever heard from the panel for a pitch?
There are a lot of questions that I think I've heard. I think honestly the differentiation one is my favorite, particularly because there are individuals and teams who end up highlighting it in their within their PowerPoint, but once again, there's not a lot of time, and so you're not able to go through some of the details. And so sometimes the judge knows of a product that's specifically out there that's pretty much exactly the same as the product that you have pitched. And I think seeing the innovation of teams and their explanation of what exactly it is that differentiates themselves from the competitor really makes me excited about their product, and really makes me realize that they have worked really hard in terms of researching and putting together the solution.
Great. Daniel Freed.
Thank you.
Next on the list there.
Yeah, I had a question about how realistic and regulatory focused our pitches should be. Specifically for us, we're thinking about a mental health COVID triage kind of system. So being a regulatory stickler, I say, crap, we can't say diagnostic anywhere or provide any diagnosis. But it's not that it's impossible to do that, it's that the regulations. So how mindful of things like that should we be?
I think you should try to be as mindful as possible, especially if, for situations like that, you are aware that this is something that could potentially be controversial or not really help with your solution. So I would make sure to do your research with regards to what exactly can and cannot say, as well as, once again, this kind of falls under that business plan of do you have the ability to really make sure that this is sustainable and can actually be implemented in the real world. And so to address that, if there are things that maybe you're unsure about, highly recommend that you guys end up reaching out to the mentors and specifying that this is a question that you have, what exactly is it that you can and cannot say, but also do be aware that if the judges challenge you on that you also have looked into the literature and research and restrictions around that, so that you do have an answer for why you may have gone one way or another.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask a few that have been texted. I don't see any more hands raised yet. There was a question about, are the judges a diverse group? Are they industry, clinical, business consultants? I think the answer is yes to all of that. But if you know more than I'm sure you know more than I do on that.
Yeah, so I believe that the judges themselves are actually on the website, so you'll be able to look at their backgrounds. And you'll be able to see kind of where they're coming from for the tracks that you guys are pitching in.
Someone would like to know if you could speak a little more to the solution slide. What do you mean by putting a design document?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have an example of a slide that's like that. I really wish I do, and I think that's one thing that I'm going to note to be able to make this how to pitch slide deck a little bit better as well. But for example, if you're creating a technology that's something along the lines of, for example, an Apple Watch, and you have put together a bunch of different sensors that are within that. What I was recommending is that, as opposed to like, if you have like 10 different sensors in there, as opposed to cluttering the slide with all of those different sensors, maybe focus on a couple of them that are the most important, or a couple of the measures that are the most important, that relate to why you chose those sensors, and then have a mock of what that Apple Watch would look like. So as opposed to, you know, really focusing in on all of the small details and things in a larger like design document that would explain how exactly this is going to be built, you want to be able to highlight the very important things about the product that you've created and focus in on the important things that you're able to, important information that you're able to get from this product.
Okay, do we have more questions? You can either raise your hand or type in chat. Let's see. Wow, I'm amazed there's not more questions. If I was pitching, I would definitely more. Trying to think if I can come up with some. Great. Oh, wait, there we go. Let's see. Looks like some are coming up. It looks like SR Lester, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, hello. In terms of having a diverse skill set, as well as showing that we have kind of experts that we need in the field, if we are lacking in skill sets, like for example, not having a back-end developer but having a front-end developer, is there more of a way to show that we can still solve the problem through the longevity of our development, or do we need to kind of, I don't know, plug that hole per se?
So there are a couple of ways that you can address this. The first is to be able to demonstrate it within the explanation of your solution itself. So if you find that there are back-end aspects of it that you can describe, and that you have either talked to a mentor or you do have that expertise, then not having the individual with that background within that final slide doesn't necessarily bring up to the judges that like, oh, we don't have confidence in this, because you have demonstrated it in your explanation of your solution. The other thing is that I think for certain backgrounds, once again, like it's understandable that you're not going to be able to get, an entire team together that will start a company just right away from the beginning. There will definitely be some spaces that you guys don't have, that you guys have gaps in. So the important thing about that slide is that anything that you do end up putting within your pitch presentation, you want to be able to show and instill in the judges that confidence that like, for what we have demonstrated so far and for what we are planning to do in the future, here are the individuals who are able to make it happen, and this is why we're going to be able to make it happen, because we have this very particular set of expertise. So it's kind of a little bit of both, where you want to be able to think a little bit about what they might ask and what they might feel is lacking within your team, but secondly, also show that whatever you do demonstrate, you're able to have that confidence that the individuals are able to accomplish that.
Thank you.
Great. I had more raised hands, but they went down. I'm going to go down to some other questions. Someone is wanting to know where the slides for your workshop presentation will be housed, so they can go back and look at them, and the recording. And I think that was already a question, and I'm not sure
Yeah, so for the slides, unfortunately, I can't release the slide deck itself, but I do believe since the recording is being done, that will be converted and uploaded very, very soon, so that you guys are able to watch that. And once again, just let us know if you do have any particular questions, and we'll be available to answer anything with regards to clarifications.
Do you know if that'll be in the workshop channel, or do we have any idea of where those resources or where that will live? I don't know if there's anyone else on the chat that's from the technical team that might know.
Yes, that'll be available on the resources section. This is Pawan.
Okay, that was my guess. Okay. So what is the question from the judges that people struggle with the most?
Oof. I'd say that this, once again, I think falls under 3 different categories that relate to the problem, solution, and business model. So there's going to be 3 questions that I described. The first with the problem is really understanding how big of an issue this is. There are a lot of people who will come in with a problem and say, okay, I'm going to solve everything related to individuals who have diabetes. But you don't really have a good sense of who exactly that's affecting and what that problem is. And so judges may probe you by trying to say, okay, can you talk about a particular example, or what age group this might work with the best. And there are some teams that just haven't thought through that. So that's where the idea of really honing in on the problem and making it as specific as possible is going to be very important. Within the solution, unfortunately, a lot of the time, people will put together a product and solution and not really have any good background with regards to the things that are going into it, or once again, might not have a very good background of how exactly they're going to implement it. So really making sure that you have a good sense of what the market is and either the technology or the individuals who are out there to help you actually implement your solution will be very, very important. For example, if you're going to be using a crowdsourcing application, that depends on getting a lot of data initially to be able to train, for example, like an AI algorithm. There's a lot of times that teams will get the question, okay, where are you going to be able to train that algorithm from in the first place? And if you don't have the answer to that, then that once again does not instill confidence that you've really thought through your solution. Within the business model itself, the other thing is once again, the implementation and how you're going to be able to actually go forward and start off with a pilot project. So a lot of times teams do end up trying to, once again, try and solve way too many problems, or say that, okay, we've identified that this problem has this much of a market share right now, and that's exactly what we're targeting for right after this hackathon. And realistically, that's just not feasible. So you may not be able to describe why exactly it is that you do choose a particular population, and then secondly, making sure that you're identifying who that initial beachhead and target market is. So I think those, in each of these sections, those are the ones that participants struggle with the most.
I think we had a question answered in the chat, but I'll go ahead and ask and answer it so that everyone, the judging criteria available, and I've been told, yes, it's in the participant's handbook. So Lisa and Daniel, you still have your hands raised. I don't know if you have additional questions or if that's just from before.
I've had mine answered. Thank you.
Okay, great. Do we have any more questions? All right. And then I'm going to put in the chat a link. I thought someone else was going to do this, but I did this just in case. For a survey, if you guys could all take that survey for this workshop, that would be great. So let me copy and paste that into the chat. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Hold on. Thought I was. Here we go. Did it just get pasted in? Oh, there it is, Natalie. Thank you. There's under Natalie's link, she's got a link to the workshop survey. So thank you so much for joining. Best of luck with your pitches. And I'll be moderating a panel at 1 o'clock, so maybe I'll see some of you guys there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Good luck.